Today I'm going to be doing a demonstration using Inktense pencils. Hi, I'm Lisa, the artist behind Lachri Fine Art. For today's project, I wanted to experiment more with spraying the white Inktense from the pencils like I did on my recent goldfish video. If you did not see it, you can check that out here. The way that I did the rays of light coming down in that video, I wanted to try creating stars using the same technique. Plus, I had recently taken this photo of a koala, so I thought he'd be perfect for this. For this entire project, I am only using the Inktense pencils. A lot of what I'm going to be showing you would be easier to do if I were combining the pencils and the blocks, but this will show you that you can get the same look with the pencils alone. Anytime that you see me applying the ink with the paintbrush, what I'm doing is scribbling on a piece of sandpaper or a scratch piece of paper, taking the pencil, scribbling whatever color I want, then taking a wet paintbrush and lifting that up. I'm basically creating my own ink mixture to paint directly onto the paper, which is going to give me a smoother look than starting off with the pencils, at least for my base layers. If you're supporters over on Patreon, I have the 1-hour version of this video available for you now, complete with voiceover and some real-time clips. So make sure to head over and check that out. So for this one, I've scribbled my black pencil onto a piece of sandpaper, and then I used a wet brush to lift some of that off. So I'm basically making my own ink mixture so that I could draw in the base of the koala. Now the reason that I'm not just using the pencil to sketch this out initially is that when I go over it with water, I'm going to be glazing color later on, and if I were to glaze over just the pencil, it would smudge all of the pencil lines. So by applying this first with the water, the mixture, and with a paintbrush, this when dry is going to be completely permanent. There will be no smudging whatsoever, so it allows me to have a lot more control in how I'm glazing and what my end result is. And I will use the pencil by itself later on, but for my initial layers, I do like to paint this on. That way, again, no smudging. And if you've not already seen it, I do have a video that goes over just the basics of using Inktense. I will have a card pop up so you can check that out. And it talks about how I'm making an ink mixture in order to paint on like this. In that video, I'm doing it with the Inktense blocks, but you can do it with the pencils too. You just want to scribble the pencil onto another piece of paper or sandpaper like I did here. I'm using a stiff brush to create some of the texture, that dense fur look. I want to make sure that I don't make any of these strokes too long, because if I do, I'm going to end up with what looks like a long-haired koala, and that is not what I want. I'm just going to continue building up the texture I want, and as this dries, the color is going to be much, much lighter than it looks like when it's wet, when it first gets put onto the paper. For the tree trunk, notice that I'm keeping those lines fairly curved. I actually didn't draw or work with the lines I initially had planned on. I decided to draw a different type of tree trunk. But notice that my lines are slightly curved. I don't want straight lines there, or it will make it look very flat. When I get onto the koala's ears, where the fur is much longer, my brush strokes are going to be longer. You really want to pay attention to that. You don't want to put super long brush strokes, because it will take an animal. I've seen people do that with lions. They'll make the brush stroke go from the top of the head all the way down to the neck. You can end up making it look like it has almost horsehair or horse mane. Make sure you pay attention to the length of all of your brush strokes. Now for the background, I'm putting my initial layer down first with this wash, where I've made that Inktense mixture with the pencil on a separate piece of paper and then lifted it up with a wet paintbrush in order to paint this directly on. The reason that I'm not starting with just the pencils is that they tend to end up with a grainy, gritty look if you go right up against the white of the paper. By blocking in this base layer, I'm going to avoid that. So I'm going to finish blocking this in. I'm using a mop brush to soften out some of my brush strokes there. Then I'm going to use the pencil and go ahead and color everything in. This is going to get much, much darker than what I would get with the wash alone. But if I just kept making washes, I'm going to be making, it'll take forever because they're just too light. So this lets me jump ahead, and now it's much darker. But again, because I am not going up against the white of the paper, being that I put the first wash down with the paintbrush, that allows this to go very dark without having that grainy, gritty white paper dots show through. So I like to layer that way. Just do the wash first and then go on top with the pencils to darken it up. And when you apply the color with the pencil, it's going to be so much darker than if you make a mixture separate with water first. Onto the stars. I have taken a sandpaper or piece of sandpaper, scribbled my white pencil all over that, then took a stiff brush and added water to that, made my little ink mixture with the white, and I flicked the paint onto the canvas or the paper so that I got the look of stars. And I did this in several layers. You want to remember that the white ends up drying much lighter than it looks when you first put it on. When you first put it on, it'll feel like it's not going to be opaque enough. Let it dry. It's going to lighten up a lot with this. But I'm just going to keep flicking that mixture onto the paper until I get it how I want it to be. Notice I did this before I did all of the detail with the koala or the tree because I would end up with white speckles all on top of those guys. So onto the koala. I want to make a base of gray, and to use the gray, the pencils and the blocks, they don't really have a nice light gray color, but you don't need that because you're just going to take your black and thin it down with water. That's how I control making the gray color. I don't mix white and black like I would with acrylic paint. I just add water to the black and gray colors that come in the set. So you can lighten everything up quite a bit. I'm going to start pulling in a lot of different purples and blues into the koala and the tree trunk here. I want him to be fairly colorful. Now you have to be careful. When you apply the pencils to the paper, it feels like it's not that bold, not that bright. But once you add water, it's kind of like one of those, holy crap, that's way more color than I planned on moments. This time I had prepared for it. I knew I was going to have a lot of color. That was what I wanted. But there have been times in the past where I did that. I added a little bit of blue to a secretary bird I did a while back, added a little bit of blue under the neck for some shading, and when I added the water, oh, was I surprised at how very bright and bold that blue was. So make sure you're testing your color on a scratch piece of paper so you're not surprised once you hit the paper. Now, luckily, these are fairly forgiving. You can go over it with a white Inktense, kind of cover stuff up, and then try again if you do go too bold somewhere. But just be aware of that. Definitely going to be a lot more bright than you're probably anticipating when you take the pencil and go straight to the paper like this. It's one of the reasons that I do like making my mixtures separately on another piece of paper and then painting it onto my actual project. It does give me a bit more control. But like I said here for this guy, I really wanted a lot more with the bright, bold colors than I typically would use. So that's where using the pencil straight to the paper and then adding water worked really well for me. Going to go ahead and brighten some more of that up. Kept adding some pencil, then I'm adding water right over it. I'm doing a little bit of dabbing with this brush. This was a stiff brush, and I'm kind of dabbing the white on there to help create more of the texture of the fur. I'm coming back through with white. This is a liner brush. This one is a synthetic hog-haired liner brush from Hobby Lobby. It's their Master's Touch generic brush. That one is probably either a number 2 or a number 3. I don't honestly remember. But I'm lining in. I made that white mixture again with the white pencil on a separate piece of paper, then added water to it so that I could have this white ink that I'm then painting my texture for the fur all over the koala. You can see as it dries, it starts to lighten up a lot more than what it was when I initially put it down onto the paper. And if you guys are interested in drawing this exact koala, I am going to have this reference photo available for all of you for free over on my Patreon page. You don't have to sign up to Patreon if you don't want to. That photo is just going to be there and available for you. So make sure to check that out. I'll have the link in the video description. This was actually one of my own reference photos. You can see I'm pulling a lot more with the blues and purples. And I'm still going to go a lot more bold on this guy. Making him very, very colorful. And when I get to the fur, I'm not going super, super realistic on this. I want to create the texture, but I don't need to sit there for the next 20 hours making sure every line is exact. As long as I've got the fur going in the general direction that it needs to be and make sure that all of my paint or my brush strokes and pencil marks are the right length and going in the right direction, then I can create that texture without having to have every little exact hair exactly like it is in the photo. Coming through and getting some more of the detail with the pencil. Now for the final details, I don't always go over everything with water. Sometimes I just leave the pencil how it is, but I'll leave those bits for the last portions of the painting because anywhere where I go over it with water, that's going to completely change what that looks like. So when I come through and use the pencil for the last highlights, I don't typically do a lot of painting with the paintbrush on top of those. I've got to be much more controlled when I come back through with any water for any additional areas later on. Working on my highlights, cleaning up things, just details like the fingers, making sure those are very well defined.
I'm using the white pencil a little bit for highlights, but it really doesn't, when you apply it straight to the paper like that, it doesn't get that bright. If you want your whites to be really white, scribble that white pencil onto another piece of paper or sandpaper, and then use a wet paintbrush, kind of lift that up, make your mixture, and apply that to the paper. That's going to give you the very, very opaque white that the pencil by itself straight on the paper won't give to you. Adding some white highlights. Just finishing all the last things up. When I get towards the end, I put my reference photo away and I just look at it from a distance and decide, what should I change on mine? Hype up contrast, tone something down, brighten something up. What does my piece need to make it better? I'm going to go ahead and brighten some of this up. Like I said, I wanted a lot of color on this guy. More of that magenta. And this does dry a bit different than when it looks like when it's wet, so that's something that takes a little bit of getting used to. Cleaning up some edges there with that pencil. And that is about it for this guy. Again, if you want to paint or draw this koala, I will have that reference photo available to you for free. You do not have to sign up if you don't want to over at Patreon, and that link will be below in the video description.
Thanks for watching. If you're new to my channel, I have new video critiques every Tuesday where I'm critiquing your original paintings or drawings, my own speed paintings, drawings, and tutorials every Wednesday, art Q&A videos every Thursday, and artist vlogs each weekend. So if you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. And you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google+. All of those social media sites are linked below in the video description where you can keep up with news, my newest work, and see real-time clips of whatever it is I'm currently working on. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I've had a few of you ask about my portfolio or how I store all of my artwork when it's not framed. So my baby chicken is here to show you guys. Okay, I can't open it with you sitting there. You're gonna have to move. Come here. We'll start over here. Look, there's a flamingo. It's what you're supposed to be. It's a flamingo. I just store my work in here. It keeps it safe, dust-free. Hey, look, another flamingo. Can you be that flamingo? You're gonna go see it? Are you the flamingo? Make it happen. Okay, I don't want you on the edge. I don't trust you not to chew on the edge of that. What? Okay, really? Come here. Are you having fun on my artwork? This is not a good idea. Don't eat the portfolio. Come here. Come on. Chicken. Here, go back here then, so I can turn the page. No, back up. I can't turn the page. This isn't gonna... Chicken. How can I turn the page if you're right there? Well, move. Oh my gosh, you have no fear of anything. Here, look. Now, as you can see, it holds lots of artwork. Tons of older stuff that you guys probably forgot I had made. But that is where I store my artwork until it's framed. And as you can see, it's safe enough that I don't have to worry about the chicken walking across it. It really does a good job of protecting the work. Okay, except when you're chewing on the end. Stop it. Come here. Come here. What are you doing? You are so rotten. Oh my gosh, baby chicken.